Mass immigration in Canada has reached a boiling point with growing public outcry. The National Citizens Coalition, called NCC, is a conservative group advocating for less government, and they've recently declared that immigration is still out of control. This follows the meeting hosted by Ontario Premier Doug Ford in Muskoka earlier this week, where Canadian premiers and Prime Minister Mark Carney discussed all things Canadian energy, trade, and jobs. But the NCC says don't just buy Canadian, prioritize hiring Canadian. They cite 3 million temporary residents straining housing, healthcare, and social services, with many now illegal as their permits expire. NCC notes that 1 in 5 workers in Canada are non-Canadians, sidelining citizens in an already strained, tough job market, while a staggering 1 in 88 people are asylum seekers, overwhelming resources alongside rising youth unemployment. This is clearly unsustainable, and it also poses a national security risk. Joining me now is NCC director, columnist, and best-selling Substack writer Alex Brown to explain why politicians continue to largely ignore this growing issue.
Gee, the
Monday CRM has the best AI
partners who love and now increasingly are dependent on cheap foreign labor. And it has been incredibly concerning to be looking at Muskoka and this lavish meeting, it's still an important meeting. There's a lot going on. There is the tariff issue. There is the interprovincial trade barriers needing to get yanked down. But they're signing, all these understandings and these promises to do better. But we're still not seeing these energy projects get made. And then meanwhile, we're leaving out what to so many is that elephant in the room, which is that we're talking about protecting Canadian jobs right now in relation to the tariff threat. And that's incredibly important because Canadian jobs are at risk in manufacturing, key sectors, steel, energy, you name it, automotive. But we have hundreds of thousands out of work. We have the town where they were in, I put this in a little video on Twitter as well. I was just walking and rambling, which is up in Muskoka right now, where they've been riding the banana boat, and Carney and Ford have been making s'mores evidently till 12:30 and patting each other on the back, which I think further solidifies people's concerns about maybe the Ford government's and Ford camp's behavior during the federal election. Is that there's thousands of local kids whose summer job no longer exists. There's grocery store workers who've been replaced by 37-year-olds from India, and communities that are being changed by these fraudulent career colleges that just offer management degrees and not the big ones that we actually need, like STEM, the trades, medicine. And whether it is solely to the benefit of some corporate partners or the governments themselves are enjoying, some of the fruits of this labor, it's unsustainable. We're talking about, finally doing right by Canada's promise for the first time in years. The Liberals seem to be course correcting, or at least saying that they are. But until they start hiring Canadian, until we start weaning these big companies, many of whom have massive government subsidies, off cheap foreign labor, it's incredibly hollow because they're not hiring Canadian. We're at risk of a generation of young Canadian citizens failing to launch because they can't even get their foot in the door, because that foot in the door has, that door has been propped open for folks that we've never let in before, and no full discredit to them, but that's not fair. It's not fair to our present working generation, and it's not fair to our future working generation.
Now, aside from the political and corporate elite prioritizing cheap foreign labor over Canadian workers, what cannot be ignored any longer is the growing number of youth struggling to enter the job market. Supporters of the temporary foreign worker program say Canadians, and youth included, don't want these jobs, but Brown warns that this isn't true and instead denies youth entry-level positions and ultimately the opportunity to build confidence and career foundations.
And it's a cope, and I understand that there might be certain companies in very specific instances, but we have record youth unemployment. You go online and you see the TikToks, and these kids are miserable, and like they're even handing their resumes in person, which the liberal boomers online are yelling at them to do, implying that they're lazy. They're not lazy. It's we all had unglamorous starting points. Like I was pumping gas. I was planting trees, landscaping, doing a terrible job at it, a terrible job. But my empathy for the situation of these kids right now, and for